I, for one, am going to demand the return of Topher Grace. So, a little more information about Sony's supposed Venom movie has come out. Now, nothing that I'm going to talk about it, so far as I'm aware at least, has been made official, like coming from Sony. But it has been reported, I believe the story originating with Collider, which usually has a pretty decent track record as far as these things tend to go. Now, there's two major things, one of which was something that we kind of knew already, and it's just a confirmation. The other of which is sort of new information. The confirmation is, yes, the Venom movie will not connect to Spider-Man Homecoming or the MCU, like at all. So this is going to be completely standalone, although that does not necessarily mean it's not going to have its own weird connections to other things. Like, if Sony makes other standalone Spider-Man spin-off movies that don't actually involve Tom Holland's Spider-Man, those could be connected to Venom. Like if they did the Sinister Six movie, but didn't use Michael Keaton's Vulture and didn't use anything that any of the... whatever. Theoretically, just whatever. The bigger thing is that the indication and the plan does appear to be a hard R-rated horror type movie for Venom. And I have very mixed feelings about that. Now, on the one hand, I have to admit this might be the one thing that they could do that would make any kind of sense in terms of telling a Venom story as a standalone, not connected to Spider-Man. And you could do it with any of the various origins, whether the symbiote is from space, whether it's created in a lab. You can do that with a horror edge. And if you're going for that feel and that vibe where it's really something terrifying and creepy, you don't necessarily need Spider-Man to sell that. So if they are determined to have it disconnected, this is probably the best way to go. That being said, even though this allows for a more standalone story, if you're not connecting it in some way to Spider-Man, what is there to distinguish this from any generic alien horror movie? What is there to distinguish this from Alien? What is there to distinguish this from Species? What is there to distinguish this from Life? Sony's own, sci-fi horror movie that some folks even floated might have been a secret Venom origin movie. It wasn't. So while on the one hand going the hard R rating makes a certain amount of sense in terms of decoupling it from Spider-Man, on the other hand, it's a genre that how are they going to stand out in that genre? And I suppose the question is whether Venom and the symbiote is going to be an anti-hero or just be a monster. Saying hard R horror leans more towards the monster, or at the very least, if they're going anti-hero, then whoever it bonds to, whether they decide to do Eddie Brock or Flash Thompson or any of the number of the other people that the symbiote has been bonded to at any point, and they have that character try and use it for good, but it's corrupting them, and that's the horror angle, and just visually is going to be the main horror thing. So if they kind of go anti-hero that way, and it's the internal struggle, maybe. But the whole thing just feels very trendy. It feels very bandwagon jumping. It feels like the real cynic in me feels like Sony announced they were going to do a Venom movie, and then there was a sizable fan reaction, some of which I saw in the comments on my own channel, going, boy, I hope they do a hard R horror type. And Sony went, oh, that's how they want us to do it. We'll do that. Now, I'm not claiming that's what actually happened. This may have been the plan from the beginning, but that's the feel that I'm getting. And even if they had planned it ahead of time, they're only going this direction because, Deadpool proved that it could work and Logan proved that wasn't a fluke. But even those things in horror superhero things, it's newish, it's uncharted territory, but does Venom actually demand an R rating? Again, like I said the last time I did a video on this, I haven't been keeping up with Venom, so I don't know how harsh the character may have gotten. I know he can potentially be intimidating and scary, but he's always just been a very sort of PG-13 kind of monster. Yeah, he roughs people's up. Yeah, he kills people on occasion, but nothing about him, at least in my understanding of the character, inherently lends itself to a hard R. That's not to say that you couldn't do one. I'm just not sure that it is as natural progression as it is with something like Deadpool or what they ended up doing with Logan. Because, even though Wolverine, a little bit like Venom in that way, has harsher elements, but has always been a little bit more family friendly is a stretch, but general audience friendly. In the movies, we always knew he was being nerfed in terms of like the guy's got the claws and he can't properly rip into people because it's PG-13. So there was always that. So it could still kind of lend itself to an R rating in that way. But with Venom, I mean, I know he hit his heyday in the 90s, and the 90s were all about extreme. But it was always kind of a safe, homogenized extreme that they did. It looked cool and edgy, but really at the end of the day, it wasn't much. Again, if the character has gone more in a legitimate horror direction in more recent years, I'd be open to hearing about that. Looking over this, sort of the wikis, the synopsis, some sample issues and stuff, it's like, yeah, he's gone dark in the same way a lot of characters have gone dark in recent decade or so, but nothing that, at least to my eye, demands an R rating. So the whole thing just feels very bandwagon jumping. But the other thing to keep in mind with Deadpool and Logan is they were relatively low budget, certainly compared to most other superhero movies. Venom, if you're gonna realize him, especially if you're doing the symbiote like as the goop and you really want to get horror, you want to get monstrous with it, it might require a bit more money. And I'm afraid what Sony might do is try and go on R rating, chasing a trend, and then on top of that, throw a ton of money at it, and those two don't mix. If you're gonna go on R-rated comic book superhero property, that's fine, but you need to be constrained, you need to be very targeted and precise about what you're doing. If you're doing the more scattershot, just throw everything at the wall and throw a ton of money at it, PG-13 is probably your better bet. I mean, overall, I'm just left with the question, why is this even a thing that's happening? And of course, I know the actual reason why this is a thing that's happening. This is the thing that's happening is because Sony desperately wants more franchise tentpoles because they're having trouble. I mean, the movie I already mentioned, Life, came and nobody really cared. It just seems like the company is struggling in its film division lately, and superheroes are hot. They have access to these properties, and they're just like, what can we do? We're not gonna wait. We're not gonna force a connection with the MCU where we have to deal with Marvel and their approval. What can we do with what we've got? And Venom is something where you can do something, so they're doing it, even though I still don't think it's a good idea. But I mean, that said, R-rated horror angle, it at least has the potential to be something new in the superhero landscape as it exists. Because really, if someone's gonna go R-rated horror style, DC should be the ones getting on this. We should. Why don't we have a Swamp Thing movie yet? Come on. I mean, they've got that. They've got Sandman. They've got Spectre. If somebody was gonna get on an R-rated horror tinged superhero, you would have thought it would have been DC. They're dragging their feet. Sony's gonna try and fill the void. Maybe it'll work. I'm really skeptical because the fact that it is disconnected from Spider-Man just kind of, in my mind, shows the hollowness of the enterprise and how it just, there's no artistic merit behind, or at least no artistic intent behind it. The intent is all the money. And I mean, studios are trying to make money. I know that. But usually the best product comes when somebody somewhere along the line, whether it's a producer or director, but somebody has an artistic vision that they know they can extract money from. You get the worst stuff when it's like somebody goes, we can make money off that. Somebody find an artsy guy to make money off that. And that's more what Venom is feeling like at this point in the process. But we'll keep an eye out. We'll see what happens. They're saying they're going to start shooting in the fall, and I'm going to come back to what I said when I talked about it the first time. That's a really quick turnaround time if they're latching onto that October of next year release date, especially given, again, Venom, it's kind of CGI reliant. That's a tight schedule. But we'll see what happens. So far as I know, Alex Kurtzman's still directing. They've got a guy on the script. I'll keep an eye on it. We'll see what happens. What are your thoughts on it? Is the news that Venom might be a hard R-rated horror give you more hope for the project? Less hope for the project? Do you still care? Did you ever? In any case, whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments and let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check me out on Twitter at Council of Geeks. Give a listen to the Council of Geeks podcast available on iTunes and Stitcher. And until next time, this council is adjourned.